The views and ideas expressed on the following program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.
Forbes magazine recently reported that there were 1,210 billionaires in the U.S. collectively. They were worth over $4.5 trillion. America continues to be the world's largest economy and boasts the lion's share of this ultra-rich class of people. In spite of this fact, an estimated 46.2 million people in America are living in poverty today. Where are we going wrong, and what can we do about it? Welcome to Wealth Solutions for the 99% with your host, Paul LaJoy. Let us show you some of the strategies that will set you on the path to building personal wealth. These are proven strategies that are working for others and can work for you, too. Now, here is your host, Paul LaJoy.
And welcome to the show, Wealth Solutions for the 99%. Every week, we share with you success nuggets that will take you to the next realm of your existence. We believe in America. We believe in what we do. And every week, I tell you that Kennedy said, don't ask what my country can do for me, but what can I do for my country? And so every week we share with you. We'll get up early in the morning, even though we'll go to bed late, but we'll get up early in the morning to come and share success nuggets with you. And today we have quite a bunch. You know, in my book, It's Impossible to Be Poor in America, I mentioned 12 ways to be successful. I talk about short sales. I talk about trustee sales. I talk about bank-owned properties, private money. I talk about all kinds of stuff. You know, talk about tax liens, and I talk about probate and everything. And I also talk about buying and holding property. You see, you don't just want to be flipping properties. You want to buy and hold. That is a true success, or the true path to success. And today I have with me on the show one of the nation's top gurus in terms of apartment investing, Mr. Anthony Chara. Mr. Chara was born in California, but he moved to Colorado in the early 2000s. Okay, and today he still lives in Colorado, and he is investing in apartments. So if you want to know how to make money investing in apartments, maybe even with very little of your own money, this is a show to listen to. And I have with me right now, without having to waste much time, Mr. Anthony Chara. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Paul. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Anthony, I really appreciate you spending time today to share with me and my audience your experience in real estate investing. But before we go ahead, how is the weather over there in beautiful Colorado?
Oh, the weather's absolutely gorgeous. It's going to be in the upper 80s, low 90s today, a couple puffy white clouds. It's just beautiful.
Really? So where are you? Are you in Denver? Or where are you? I have never been to Colorado, actually.
Yeah, I'm in the Metro Denver area.
How's that compared to Metro San Francisco?
Well, I grew up in Southern California, so the biggest difference is that we have traffic during the typical rush hours in the morning and the afternoon. But other than that, we don't have a whole lot of traffic or a lot of things slowing us down. We have maybe 5 million people in the entire state, as opposed to California, which has 5 million people in one little neighborhood there in Los Angeles. So a lot.
Oh, really? Man, that's interesting. I never knew that. Colorado, the entire state is only 5 million people?
Yeah, something like that, 5 or 6 million, I think.
Oh, that's so crazy. Yep. That's amazing. Is that why you moved over there from California?
No, actually it's not. I actually moved here in the early 80s because of a job promotion. I was doing pretty well at my JOB, and they made me an offer when I was only 22 years old to move to Colorado, and got a pretty nice pay raise, but that nice pay raise and move also allowed me to buy my first house at 22 years old out here in Colorado.
What did you buy? Single-family residence, a condo, townhouse?
Yeah, bought a single-family house. Mm-hmm. So, matter of fact, my sister and I and brother-in-law were looking at buying a house down in Orange, California, and I think it was about 1,400 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and they wanted, I want to say it was like $140,000 or $150,000 for it. This was back in like 1983. And then the next year they offered me, we didn't do it, and I came out here and started looking at houses and ended up with a 1,900 square foot house for $80,000.
Wow. How much are they going for now?
Now that same house, because of everything is kind of dropped down, the economy's dropped down, it's about $160 for that same house.
Okay. Interesting. So you love Denver?
Did you say, do I love Denver?
Yes.
I love Denver from mid-April to mid-September.
Oh, mid-April. Wow.
Yeah, you can't beat the weather here. You know, since I grew up in Southern California, I was never privy to snow and a lot of rain. You know, we'd have the rainy season in February, March, and such like that, and then you'd have the morning marine layer and stuff like that occasionally. But coming out here, it gets cold. I mean, really cold.
Oh, okay. You mean after September, right?
Yeah, September 15th through about April 15th, it can get down. It can get pretty chilly. January, it can get below zero for a couple of weeks. But the summers, you can't beat them. It gets a little warm during the day, but there's very little low humidity. Usually in the afternoon, 5, 6 o'clock when the sun starts going down, it cools off. You can open up the windows. You don't have to leave the air conditioner on all day, so it's gorgeous up here. I probably shouldn't be saying that because then we're going to have a whole bunch of your listeners all moving to Colorado.
No, not so, because most of my listeners live in the Bay Area. You cannot beat the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. It never gets really cold here, never gets really hot, except you're really in San Francisco. But we're outside, like East Bay, South Bay, man, it's really the best weather in the world. You know, I never found myself wearing a coat here, right? I'm talking about like a coat, like people over there will wear in winter. But it's so nice over here, so I don't see people moving there. But that's great to know. So you moved to Colorado and you have never looked back. I mean, basically, you go back to obviously go back to Southern California from time to time, but you moved there a long time ago and you bought your first home and you haven't thought about going back to Southern California?
Oh, I've thought about it. I actually travel around quite a bit with what I do and the training classes that I teach on apartments. And because of that, I get back to Southern California usually once or twice a year, Northern California where you're at least once a year. I travel all over the country, so whenever I need to, also because of the classes and also because of the real estate I own, if it does get cold, it gets chilly, it gets snowy, I can always hop on a plane and go take a business trip somewhere. So it works out.
Okay, great. So you got a job, a job offer to move to Colorado. You moved there. You bought your first home when you were 22, right? And basically, that's when you started investing. Would you consider your first home an investment property?
No, I wouldn't, because I just bought the home because that's what you were supposed to do. You're supposed to get a good job and buy a house and then eventually pay the house off and then move up to a nicer house or a bigger house. And that's kind of what my plan was. I bought the house in '84 and was just working my little butt off with my job. Didn't really even know better. Didn't know you could really do real estate investing and that kind of stuff. So I didn't do much from '84 until about '91. And then in '91, my wife and I went to a training class. It was a 4-day training class put on by a group way back then known by the guy's name was Charles Givens.
Okay.
Since passed away. He wrote a book years ago called Wealth Without Risk, which was pretty phenomenal at the time. It was probably that heyday's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It taught you how to take a lot of the little things that you do and save a little money here, a little money there, and eventually it adds up. And it added up tremendously for us doing some of the things that he suggested. And one of the things, of course, he suggested was talking about getting into real estate as an investment vehicle, not just your own single-family home, but other vehicles or other rental properties. So we ended up somehow we got on somebody's list in '91 and with Charles Givens, and they invited us to a 4-day class where they taught us how to go through the paper and look at different properties and make offers and stuff like that. And from that point, we were hooked. We started doing stuff, but still, all we really knew how to do was to buy a home and turn it into a rental property. So it wasn't until '93 that my wife and I actually took action. We decided to turn our first home into a rental property, just move out of it, move into a bigger home, which we did, and that was our first rental. So I didn't really actually get into quote-unquote real estate investing until '93. But from '93 to the early 2000s, all I really knew how to do was to buy a rental property, You buy a home, turned into a rental, buy another home, turned into a rental. So I was just doing the little onesie single-family homes here and there and condos and stuff like that until about the early 2000s, which is when I kind of took it to the next level, the next gear.
Interesting. So 1993, you bought your first investment property. And of course, that was, you still owned your single family residence, your primary residence at the time?
Well, we didn't technically own it. We were still paying the bank, but when
Okay.
we moved out, that's when we turned it into a rental property, and it was cash flowing pretty well. I think our monthly mortgage payment was probably $700 or $800 a month, and we were getting about $1,100 or $1,200 a month in rent, which helped offset the cost of our new mortgage on our new property that we bought a few miles away from where we lived at the time.
So you started investing then in 1993, and you were investing in single-family residences, condos, and townhouses, and then you decided to go into apartments. What made that transition possible, or what made it attractive?
Well, the biggest thing that made it possible was, quite frankly, was education and timing. So part of it was we got into, my wife and I got into, I had actually sold the business. I got out of my regular corporate job back in 97, and we started up a small business and ran that for about 3 years, and then realized that we had just basically created another paycheck for ourselves. It wasn't really a business, and we're getting burned out on it, so decided to sell it in 2000. And 2001, started looking around for other opportunities, and we ended up started buying notes and doing factoring and things like that, and that, quite frankly, didn't go very well for us. But through that process, we ended up being invited to another seminar, and one of the speakers showed up named Robert Allen, and we went. We heard Robert Allen speak, and thought that real estate might be a great vehicle. My wife and I had always known that most of the wealth in this country has been created, most of the millionaires in this country have been created by people that have owned real estate and through the real estate.
So you left your job in 1997, and you dabbled in quite a few things. First of all, you did single-family residences. Then you did condos and townhouses. Then you did notes as well. Interesting. But then, when did you decide apartment investing is what you really want to do?
Well, I ended up meeting a couple people that really changed my life. One was one of my mentors here in Colorado. We were, after I had sold the business in early 2000, I started looking around for another business opportunity, and someone that I knew that was starting up another new business had brought a group of people together to talk about a business venture that he was trying to raise capital for. And one of the people sitting in that meeting was a gentleman named Ron, who started talking about the fact that he owns apartment units. And at the time, he owned about 450 units. And I'm thinking, wow, that's where I want to get to. Because at the time, I think we had 8 or 10 properties, 8 or 10 single-family homes. And I wanted to get to that next level. So I asked him if I could take him to lunch and pick his brain sometime. And he said, yeah.
Right.
So we got together a couple weeks later, and met for lunch. And one of the things that stood out when we started chatting was the fact that out of his 450 units that he had, he was cash flowing tremendously. I mean, like, we're talking $140,000 to $150,000. And when he first said that, I'm thinking, wow, I could use an extra $140,000 to $150,000 a
That
year.
was his cash flow? Was that his cash flow after all the expenses? He was cash flowing $140,000 to $150,000. Is that a year or a month?
Well, at first I thought it was a year, and then he told me that was per month. He was
Positive
cash flowing $140,000 to $150,000 a month because he was a Depression-era baby, and his parents taught him not to keep any mortgages longer than he had to. So whenever he did buy a property, he would take every extra dime that he had off the property once he took some living expenses, and he would throw it all at the mortgage just to pay the mortgage down as quickly as possible. So in the mid-'90s, when he was in his heyday, he was making $140,000 to $150,000 every single month. And I said, okay, how do I get to be where you are? I said, what do I need to do differently? And he looked at me, and we talked about the fact that I had bought a few single-family homes. And he basically looked at me and said, look, you're doing everything the right way. The only thing you're not doing is taking it to the next level. You're just not. Why are you buying one single-family home when you could be buying a 10 or a 20 or 30 or 40-unit apartment building?
That's amazing. That's amazing. You see, last week I gave people things that they should be doing. Did you know that this month is a positive thinking month? And one of the things that I told people to do was actually take a business person or a mentor out for lunch. Can you imagine? That's what you did, right? And it was an eye opener for you. You took someone to lunch, right? I mean, he could buy lunch himself, but you took him to lunch. And guess what? He told you he made between 140 and $150,000 a month positive cash flow. And that was the pivotal moment in your life. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was pretty pivotal, and that's when I knew I wanted to get into apartment investing. So at that point, back to the Robert Allen thing. Robert Allen, I went to his classes. I took classes on wholesaling. I didn't even know until I met Robert Allen that you could do things like wholesaling and fixing and flipping and apartments and short sales. Didn't even know that stuff existed. So that was very eye-opening. Did all the different classes, tried all the different things, didn't really have a knack for the fixing and flipping. I put too much money into the properties. The short sales, I never got anything done with those. Wholesaling worked, but it was still one of those things where you did it, the money was great, but then you had to go find the next deal, and it was, I think, 6 months before I found my next deal.
Right.
So it's like, okay, this isn't cutting it either. And then at about the same time, I took a class on apartment investing, met my mentor, Ron, and then also at the same time ran into my future partner at the time, a gentleman named George. And George and I decided to go buy an apartment building. And we ended up buying one. First one we bought was a 14-unit out in Oklahoma City.
Right.
And one of the things that I realized after closing on it is after we closed on it, the checks kept coming in month in and month out. And they were bigger than the single-family homes. So the single-family homes, of course, had positive cash flow, but we're talking, at the time it was like $100 here or $50 there or $200, depending on what was going on that month. And then all of a sudden we get this check from the apartment building, and it's a couple $1,000s, and it's this month, and it's next month, and it's next month. And I think, wow, this is pretty good. And then, of course, meeting up with Ron, my other mentor, he started teaching me the things that they don't teach you in some of the classes that you spend thousands and thousands of dollars to go to.
Right.
It sounds great, but in the reality, when you come out and you try actually putting some of that stuff to use, you find out that they didn't teach a whole lot. And that's where Ron kind of filled in those blanks to get me to that next level. And now I'm up over 1,400 units.
Wow, 1,400 units. So basically, you beat Ron then. So Ron had 450, you got 1,400. That's amazing. We're going to talk about that. I mean, you had quite an amazing evolution in your real estate career. Invested, tried all kinds of stuff, started with single-family residences and did notes, short sales, flipping. I mean, just amazing. So if you're listening right now, you can call 866 472-5790, 866-472-5790. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to continue with Mr. Chowder. Man, there's amazing stuff that you can learn. I wish we had like 2 hours.
Be sure to friend us on Facebook. You can do it right now. Visit facebook.com/Voice America or search for us at keyword Voice America.
Dialogue is the single most powerful leadership tool we have to make a difference in the world. Leading Conversations with host Cheryl Esposito creates a place for that dialogue. Tune into the Voice America Business Channel every Friday as Cheryl hosts new conversations among leaders from around the world in business, government, art, economics, and social change. We'll explore big ideas and everyday actions and learn how their own leadership has led them to discover a newfound sense of possibility in the world. Leading Conversations with Cheryl Esposito, bringing big thinkers together in conversations that make a difference right here on the Voice America Business Channel every Friday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Costa, host of the Costa Report every Tuesday at 6 a.m. and again at 6 p.m. This week, my guest is outspoken former congressman and one of our country's most prominent gay public figures, Mr. Barney Frank. He'll be with us to talk about the Supreme Court's ruling on DOMA and how the Obama presidency is doing in its second term. Don't miss Barney Frank this Tuesday at 6 a.m. and again at 6 p.m. on the Voice America Business Channel.
What's going on behind the scenes with your favorite Voice America show or host? For the latest news, visit the iRadio blog at iradioblog.com.
are tuned in to Wealth Solutions for the 99% with Paul LaJoy. We'd love to hear from you on today's program. Please call in to 1-888-346-9141. That's 1-888-346-9141. Or email us at lajoysolutions@gmail.com. Now, back to Wealth Solutions for the 99%.
Welcome back to Wealth Solutions for the 99%. We say that, I hear that there are 41 million people in America who are poor. I mean, can you imagine that? 41 million people who are poor. And then we're talking to Mr. Charity today, who started, with a job back in the 80s, moved from Southern California to Colorado, and he started doing some real estate investing. And today he boasts up to 1,400 units. That's amazing. And he's about to share with us what really made him successful. And before the break, he talked about taking a mentor to lunch and going to these seminars, meeting with Mr. Allen, Robert Allen. And so if you want to be successful, like I say in my book, you got to find the right environment. First of all, you got to have a vision. You got to have the passion. You're going to take action. You're going to have the determination. Then you're going to have the discipline, right? Then the right environment. And you got to have a mentor. Those things, if you have those things, you will never be poor in America. On the phone, we have a caller, Mr. Rowe. And Mr. Rowe, I know him very well.
How are you doing, Paul? Good morning.
I'm doing very well. Rowe, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm actually in the office working. Hi, Anthony. How are you? Long time.
I'm doing good, Ro. How are you been?
Good. I listened into Paul's radio show every Saturday morning, and I heard you were coming on, so I thought I would, say hi to you.
Awesome. Glad you could make it.
Yeah, so definitely. I met Anthony. What was Anthony, about a year and a half ago?
I think it was about a year ago, wasn't it? Maybe it was about a year ago. I came out to the San Jose area there and did a presentation, and then he ended up coming to my class.
Right. And Anthony's class, for the listeners, and the reason why I called was just to kind of, my experience with Anthony was wonderful. He's very confident in, giving the entire steps to purchasing, apartment buildings for investors, first time, beginners experience, tells you how to, get into partnerships. What's really great is he shows you how to buy apartments without your own money, OPM, other people's money. So he's been very successful, and appreciate having him as a mentor or just someone we can call anytime. I've called him when I needed to kind of look at some deals, and I was actually going to join his class, but we're in the development side, so I never got to it, but we will in the future.
That's great. That's great, Ro. So, Ro, you basically joined real estate not too long ago. I know that your parents are into apartment investing, but you yourself joined real estate, and today, my goodness, I remember talking to you yesterday. You made quite a bunch of money this year. I mean, this month alone.
Right. I got into real estate about 2 years ago. I was kind of following you, right, Paul? We were friends. I was in the corporate struggle and hustle, if you may say. And I just wanted kind of a different, exit out and enjoy life. And if you're going to put in the work, why not put in the work for yourself, right? And real estate's been great if you understand it. People we talked about this last night, right, Paul? Diversification. I hear so many people in corporate America talk about, I want to put my money into diversification, not into real estate. Well, if you understand real estate, you can diverse yourself. You can do it fix and flips, kind of like Anthony's touched all different areas in real estate. And I myself have been dabbling into, short sales and trustee sales, development deals, buying and selling, helping clients out. And, now my parents have gotten into apartments about 30 years ago. And that's when kind of I saw the light down the tunnel, and I said, okay, there's something here.
Right. So, Ro, let me ask you, do you have a question for Anthony on the show today?
Yeah, I actually do. I wanted to ask Anthony, when you started investing into, and I'm sure we talked about this before, but when you started investing into apartments, were you looking in California or out of state, locally? What do you recommend? Someone that's a beginner and that's looking to get into apartment investing, it's so overwhelming sometimes. You have so much stuff on LoopNet. How would you kind of break it down for someone that doesn't know anything but they want to get in?
Okay, well, great question. Well, first off, again, I can't stress enough that you need to get educated. So it's one thing to start looking for properties in a certain area, but it's another thing to be looking at them with an educated mind so that you know what it is that you are looking for. So there are deals, as I tell my students, there are deals all over the country. There are deals in your backyard. There are deals in other people's backyards. Here's the biggest difference, though, that I've seen in California, especially around some of the major cities like San Jose, San Francisco, Los Angeles. Sometimes the prices are so high there that you can't really cash flow very well on those properties.
Right.
I mean, in some cases, I've seen some properties out in those areas where they want you to buy them, and you actually have negative cash flow. And it's like, it boggles my mind that people would want to get into those types of properties, but they do. So certainly you can look in your own backyard. There are plenty of places that you can do it. You mentioned earlier there's a website called loopnet.com. You can also, I would highly recommend you talk to some very knowledgeable brokers in the market if you're looking at apartments that understand apartments in that particular area, in that market, and tell them exactly what it is that you're looking for, the type of cash flow that you're looking to get, the type of units that you're trying to buy, the number of units that you're trying to buy, and the areas that you want them to look in. And then just keep looking. And in some cases in California, you will find the property that you're looking for, but it might take you a lot longer to actually get all the things aligned the way that you need them to be aligned. You might have to look at 100 properties to make 2 offers or 3 offers. There's other areas of the country that you can look at in the Midwest and the Southeast, which is where I do most of my investing, that you might only have to look at 10 or 20 properties to make 2 or 3 offers. So it all depends on what you're looking for, the type of cash flow return that you're looking for, whether or not you need to bring in other investors to make sure there's a big enough piece of the pie to bring in everybody so that everybody gets their cash flow the way that they want it to cash flow. There's a lot of different things that you need to look at. So certainly and I do meet people all the time that are interested in only buying in their own backyard. That's fine. I totally understand that, but you're going to have to start aligning yourself with people in those markets like real estate agents or even property managers that know about properties that are coming up for sale that you might be able to get a pretty decent deal on.
So, Anthony, therefore you are privy to properties that are not on the market. And most times you come across properties that are not on the market. And would they be better buys than what you find on the market?
Yeah, most of the time they are, because by the time they hit the market, like LoopNet.com, a lot of times when they hit that, there's already been a lot of people that have looked at that particular property, and to them it wasn't a quote-unquote deal. So the agent eventually listed it on LoopNet. So generally what happens in this particular market, the best deals are actually what are called pocket deals, where a seller gives the property or lists the property with an agent, but the agent doesn't automatically put it out on LoopNet or on their own website, or even sometimes doesn't even tell the other agents in their own office. What they do is they pick up the phone and they start calling what I call their pocket clients. These are clients that they know that can perform. They're going to move on the property because the numbers are going to hit what they think the investor's going to need. And a lot of those deals never even make it to the MLS. So what you want to do is start aligning yourself with those types of people, the agents that have their finger on the pulse of the community, and start meeting with them, tell them what it is you're looking for, take them to lunch, buy them lunch. Don't let them buy you lunch. You buy them lunch. Okay. And eventually what you're going to do is they're going to come to you when they have a property that meets your criteria, and they're going to pick up the phone and call you as one of a handful of people. But when they do call you with that particular property, you need to be ready to move forward.
So, Anthony, a lot of our listeners share basically people that are investing in single-family residences and condos and stuff. It sounds like you don't invest in these types of properties anymore. So what would you advise them? They say, okay, they kind of feel they don't have enough money and stuff, but you talk about it looks like apartment investing is a thing to do for people that want to buy and hold. So what's your advice to these types of people, these types of investors?
Well, you do have to have a comfort level for what it is that you want to do. And I know that with a lot of people that I talk to, there's still that single-family home mindset where They know single-family homes. They live in a single-family home. They understand single-family homes. And so they just keep doing single-family homes again and again and again. Well, especially with some of the money that you have to put down on properties in California, where you might have to put down $50,000, $100,000 to buy some of those properties, you could take that same money that you're putting in California, take it to another state, and you could buy a 20, 30, 40-unit apartment building. And then what you're doing is you're multiplying the return that you're getting. So instead of getting a little bit of return or $100 or $200 a month on a single-family home, now you're getting that per unit on a 20, 30, 40-unit apartment building. So instead of making $200 or $300 or $100 a month positive cash flow or whatever it is that they're making, when you multiply that by 20, 30 units, now all of a sudden they're making $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month.
That sounds so good, but some investor might be afraid that, oh, listen, this is far away, this is in Oklahoma, this is far away, this is in Milwaukee, and stuff like that. So how do you circumvent those fears?
Well, quite frankly, part of it is just doing it. One of the best ways to break through your fear, whether it's a fear of flying or a fear of heights or even being claustrophobic, is to just do it. It's all in your mind. That's really what it comes down to. So how do you get over that fear? First off, you need to find a property manager in that market where the property is located that you have a comfort level with, that you think going into it that they're going to be taking care of you and they're going to be taking care of your property. That's the biggest thing, because you're not going to be going there every day. You live in California. The property is a couple states away. You need to have that trust level going in with those property managers. And certainly there are ways that you can interview them, questions that you can ask them, reports that you can get from them before you make the final decision as to who you're going to pick. But ultimately it really comes down to finding a good property manager out of state. Once you get that first property, your first property manager's in there, they're running the property for you, as long as they're reporting everything properly, the vacancy's staying consistent, you're going to be just fine. You're going to go over your fear very, very quickly.
So, Ro, are you still there with us, Ro?
I am.
Okay, cool. So do you have another question for Anthony before I move on to other questions for him?
Yes. So I have another question which kind of involves the steps, right, Anthony? So you find a deal, you build this relationship, and now I know from your class you go into detail, especially if you become a mentor in your group, that the acquisition phase, the rehabbing and repositioning kind of comes after. But you mentioned something, the due diligence, right? That's probably the most crucial part of purchasing and getting into apartment investing. If someone doesn't do their homework, they're not going to be successful, right?
Absolutely.
What would you recommend about the due diligence period? How important is that to you when you're purchasing an investment property?
It's absolutely vital, Ro. And the funny part is most people get hung up on the first couple steps that you're talking about. Most people, because they're concerned about the financing, or they're concerned about finding the property, or they're concerned about it being out of state, they let the concerns get in their way, and because of that, they never even bother to take any action at all. So I try and teach my students, it's like, you haven't bought the property yet. Why are you getting all hung up on all this other stuff? Make the phone calls, do the research, find a deal that you're interested in buying, and analyze it quickly to see whether or not it's even worth putting an offer in on. If it is, put in an offer. Once you go through the contract phase and the offer is accepted, and you're comfortable with all of the things that you're asking for in the contract, you don't want to. There are certain key points that I teach that you absolutely do not want to give up. And if they do ask you to give them up and you can't get around it, you walk away from the deal and you go find another one. But assuming they're okay with all those key points, once you sign the contract, now is when the fun starts. Now is the due diligence phase, where you actually have to go through and you have to understand the numbers that the seller's giving you. You have to be able to prove that the numbers are accurate, both the income and the expenses, before you actually get to the closing table. And the nice part about it, too, though, is there are a lot of people that, are afraid and they have fear through all these things. And as a wise man said once years ago, people have fear constantly. And what makes one person courageous isn't that they don't have fear. They just have the fear, but they push through it anyhow. They continue on and they move forward. So during that due diligence phase, one of the key aspects you need to understand is that your lender is on your team. I know a lot of people don't like going with lenders, and there's always extra paperwork and something happens and there's a twist that comes up and they need something else. And you know what? When it comes to commercial properties, they're going to put an extra set of eyes on your deal because they want to make sure that your property cash flows the way that they need it to cash flow so that they're happy loaning you the money that they're going to be loaning to you.
Anthony, there are some people listening right now to the show, and that first-time investors, actually, they have never invested in any property, but there are mentees listening to this show, and they told me to be listening today. And Ro just mentioned that, I mean, one of the things that you teach is investing without any of your own money. How true is that? You buy an apartment complex, not even a single-family residence or condo, and you can buy it without any of your own money?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways that you can do it. So first off, number one, just because it's not your money doesn't mean that you don't have to come to the closing table with money. There are ways that you can partner up with other people and raise the funds where you find the deal, you analyze the deal, you bring the whole thing together, and you act as what I call the orchestra conductor, right? You're up there making all the different instruments play well together, make sure all the timing is working. But you have someone else who brings in $20,000 or $50,000 or $100,000, and another person that brings in $20 or $50 or $100,000, and another person that brings in the same amount of money, and you put that whole thing together, that whole package together. So that's one way that you can buy properties with little to none of your own money. There are other ways that you can do it too, just like with single-family homes. With single-family homes, there's such a thing as buying a property subject to. Well, what does that mean? It means subject to the existing mortgage staying in place. You can do that with an apartment building as well. You can also do, for your listeners that know how to do lease options, you can do the same exact thing with an apartment building. You can lease option an apartment building.
Wow, that's amazing. If you're listening, Anthony just talked about you becoming an orchestra conductor. What does an orchestra conductor do? Just conducts. You know, he is actually not the one that is playing the instruments, right? He just directs people what to do. I'm sure you've been to a symphony. If you have, or you have not been to one, but you've seen one on television or something, you see what a conductor does, right? You have the pianist there, you have the violinist, you have all kinds of instruments playing. But the orchestra conductor is the one that really everybody is looking to. So, and he also talked about, subject to acquiring properties subject to the existing loan on the property, or even to a master lease agreement or something like that, or even a lease option, right? There's several ways that you can acquire property without any of your own money. But let me ask you a question, Anthony. Someone is in California right now. Most of my listeners are here in California. And you talk about, I mean, if you go online or Google, I mean, not Google, but you go on LoopNet, I mean, you see properties are kind of expensive. How do they find deals? You recommend out of state. You talked about Midwest and some other parts of America. How do they find these nuggets? How do they find these properties? And how do they negotiate and tie up a deal?
Well, the first thing I would recommend that they do is they actually find an area outside of, if they want to go outside of California or wherever it is that they live, find another area that they would like to go visit. Find an area that they are interested in investing in and start there. Start by finding local commercial brokers, local commercial property managers that handle the type and the size of apartment building that they're going to be looking for. Start meeting with those people. If they have the ability to go visit that particular area in person, that's even better. They can stop in at places like the local Chamber of Commerce. They can find out what's going on with the economy in the market. They can stop in with some of the local representatives, the state representatives in that market to find out what's happening. Are jobs coming into the market? Are jobs going out of the market? And start just coordinating and building relationships with these different people. That's really what it comes down to. This is a relationship game. It's not about finding something on LoopNet. You know, I tell my students that the Internet is a great place to start looking for properties, but eventually you need to get off your assets and you need to go to the market and create those relationships so that when a deal falls in someone's lap that knows you and likes you and trusts you, they're going to be calling you up so that you get that fantastic deal.
This is just amazing. 85% of Americans don't like their jobs. And that's what started with you. I mean, basically, I'm sure you loved your job, but eventually you went into real estate and started doing it full time. And today you are mentoring people, telling people, I mean, sharing some kind of joie de vivre with them. And people are listening to the show today. They're listening and say, how did it start? This is just amazing. Anthony said, basically, find an area where you're interested in visiting. So, for example, if you're interested in visiting Milwaukee. I don't know why I keep saying Milwaukee today, but let's say you're interested in visiting Milwaukee.
You must be ready to have a beer.
Exactly. So just go there to Milwaukee, or before you go there, start to look for real estate brokers in that market space and interview them. Talk to the government, do some research. That's all you need to do, and then you'll find deals. And like he said, most of the deals, the best deals, are pocket deals. Well, is that rocket science? It's not. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to continue with Anthony. I'm sure there is no paradise on earth. We're going to talk about what are some of the pitfalls of investing even in apartments, right? But we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue with Mr. Chara. Thank you.
Think you've seen everything there is to see in online television? Let us surprise you. Visit voiceamerica.tv today for sports, health, business, and more on demand 24/7.
Do you need directions to solid financial future? If so, the Money Answer Show with Jordan Goodman will provide you with a roadmap to making smart money decisions in every area of your personal finances. Join Jordan every Monday at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 3 p.m. Eastern for the Money Answer Show on the Voice America Business Channel. Learn how and where to get the best deals on mortgages, cars, and insurance. Find out the best ways to save for college and retirement. Get out of debt, improve your credit rating, and save on your taxes. The Money Answer Show with Jordan Goodman will provide you with great tips on investment opportunities in real estate, stocks, annuities, and other investment vehicles. That's the Money Answer Show with Jordan Goodman on the Voice America Business Channel every Monday at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Are you an entrepreneur that wants to achieve more? Not just in it for profit, but to do work you find meaningful, that adds more value to more people in more ways? Listen for Be More, Achieve More, Inspiration for the Entrepreneurial Mind. With host Chris Cooper, you'll hear from successful achievers from around the world with the passion and experience to offer invaluable guidance. These people are making a difference and will help give you the motivation and insight to achieve more. Be More, Achieve More can be heard live Fridays at 8 a.m. U.S. Pacific Time on the Voice America Business Channel.
We're making it easier to listen to the Voice America Talk Radio Network live wherever you go on iPhone, BlackBerry, or Android. Download it from the Apple iTunes App Store, BlackBerry App World, or Android Market.
You are tuned in to Wealth Solutions for the 99% with Paul LaJoy. We'd love to hear from you on today's program. Please call in to 1-888-346-9141. That's 1-888-346-9141. Or email us at lajoysolutions@gmail.com. Now, back to Wealth Solutions for the 99%.
My dear listener, I'm sure you're having as much of a great time as I am. Every Saturday here on this show, we share with you the nuggets to be successful. And today is no exception. Actually, today is very special. We're talking about investing in apartments. And we have one of the nation's top investors in terms of apartments. He told us his evolution in real estate investing. He talked about, he started off buying single-family residences. He did notes, short sales, and all kinds of things. And then he's doing investing in apartments. I think before the break, he talked about even investing without any of your own money. But it doesn't mean that you don't have to come to the table with no money. It means that it's not your money, but guess what? When you find a great deal, people will come to you because honestly, people are a little selfish, right? So when you find a good deal, people run to you, not you running to them. So why don't you specialize in finding great deals? And he talked about how to find those great deals. Just find an area where you're interested in visiting, right? Interview a few people there, especially brokers and government officials. Find out what's the job market over there. Well, how's the economy? That's all you got to do. And that's why I say it's impossible to be poor in America. You got 41 million people who are poor. You roam the streets of Oakland, San Francisco, even San Jose, even Newark here. You find some homeless people and poor people. It baffles me. But I think that barring mental or physical inability, I'm talking about being disabled, I really believe that it's impossible to be poor in America. And Mr. Anthony Chara is sharing that with us today freely. He's giving this knowledge. We talk about knowledge. See, knowledge is power if you apply it. So we're going to share with you more about apartment investing. And don't be scared. Don't be scared to get an apartment. Man, I got to invest in an apartment. I don't even have a single family residence. Okay. So, Anthony, so we've talked about, investing in apartments. Have there been any pitfalls for you in investing? I mean, the economy tanked in 2008, 2009, 2010, and now it's recovering again. Have you found any disadvantages of investing in real estate?
Yeah, there are some disadvantages, of course, to anything, and most of it comes down to something that Ro brought up earlier before the break, and that is making sure you do your due diligence. And a couple of times that some of the deals we've gotten into that haven't gone as well as we would have liked is because we, back when we were first starting up, we didn't do the best due diligence that we could have and should have done. But what we did is we learned from that and added those extra little things that kind of bit us in the butt a few years ago to our checklist to make sure that we check those things out on future deals.
Due diligence is paramount. I mean, you can't go into a marriage without, first of all, dating that person, understanding what that person is made of. Okay? So the same thing, you can't just go buy a property or just hear somebody tell you this is a great deal, and it's happened to me. I mean, I have been burnt on some deals, even recently, where somebody tells me buy this because of one reason or another. I did not do my due diligence, and because of that, I'm bleeding. That's bad.
Yeah.
So you got to do your DD.
Yeah,
due diligence. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, so one of the things that your listeners need to understand, Paul, is that this is a business. The seller, in most cases, the seller's not your friend. A lot of them are going to tell you, oh, trust me, this is this and that's that, and up is up and down is down, and they're going to expect you just to take their word for it. You can't do that. Just like Ronald Reagan said years ago, trust but verify. So they give you the information, that's fantastic, but you need to verify the information. You need to verify that the rents are truly the rents. You need to verify that the expenses are truly the expenses. And if they tell you that the roof was replaced 5 years earlier, great, make them prove it. And then not only if they give you an invoice that shows that they replaced the roof 5 years earlier, great. Call the number on the invoice. Talk to the people that own the company and find out if it's a true and accurate invoice to make sure that they're not trying to pull one over on you, or they changed the address or something and they did it on the building across the street instead of this one. So you do need to do your due diligence, and keep in mind it is a business decision. They're not your friends. You're probably not going to be going over to their house on a weekend and doing a barbecue. So sometimes they'll get upset. I've actually had owners scream and yell at me because I asked them for a document, or I told them I needed to do one other additional thing, and it's like, well, I'm sorry you're upset, but this is what I need to do, and they'll scream and yell, and I've had a few of them cuss me out a few times, and it's like, well, you know what? I'm the one that's going to have to live with this, and my investors are going to have to live with this after you're gone. And this isn't about your comfort level. This is about my comfort level. So I either get what I need for my deal, for my comfort level, my investor's comfort level, or we walk. So can you help me, or should we just cancel the deal now?
That is amazing. That's amazing stuff they are sharing with us today. The seller is not your best friend. Really, he's not even your friend. So basically, the seller just wants to get out. There are many reasons why they might be selling. Maybe because they're bleeding. They're not making money. Just want to get out. So investigate, right? Like you said, trust but verify. Trust but verify. That's great stuff there, right? And treat it as a business. And this is serious business. It's not a plaything. There's money involved here. There might be HOA dues if you're investing in condos or townhouses. Investigate that. And then when you are sure, that's why you have due diligence, right? Even in commercial apartment investing, you have due diligence period, don't you?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. So can you tell us 5 things to watch out for when you're investing in apartments?
Oh, 5 things to watch out for. First off, the biggest one is you want to make sure that the leases that they give you are true and accurate, and they're not forged. Fortunately, this has not happened to me, but I had one of my mentors had an issue where the owner actually forged the leases, and he didn't find out until after he closed. So he taught me some techniques that you can look for on those leases to see whether or not they've all been signed by the same person. So that's one thing. Make sure that the leases are true and accurate. Another thing that you can do along those lines is you can do something called a tenant estoppel certificate, where you can actually have an independent third party interview all of the tenants and confirm independently that the leases that they gave you are the amounts that they put in for the monthly rent, the deposits, and that kind of stuff, that's all true and accurate. That's number one. Number two, you want to verify all of the expenses on the property. So when they tell you that they're spending a certain amount for different expenses, you want to do your best to talk to different vendors and different service providers that have either worked on the property or might potentially work on the property in the future to make sure that they're all true and accurate. You want to check the seller's rental criteria. So most good property managers are actually going to have a written policy that says this is the criteria we are going to rent the unit under. We want to make sure that the tenant has a certain amount of income compared to the rent. We want to make sure that they have a certain credit score. We want to make sure that they have no criminal record in some cases, or in some cases there are some properties that they will allow what's called things like soft crime, but they won't allow people that have had felonies, no murderers, child molesters, people like that, bank robbers. But if somebody was picked up for shoplifting a candy bar or something like that, that's not going to be a big deal for most people. They'll probably still rent to them. So you want to check that criteria and see what it is that they're using. It'll tell you the type of quality of tenant that is in the property. Another thing that you can do to check the quality of the tenant is what I call a rent roll analysis. You're going to go through at least the last 12 months minimum, and you want to look at all of the leases. And if the seller has it, you want to look at something called the tenant ledgers. The tenant ledgers is a snapshot of each tenant in the property for as long as they've been in the property. And what you want to do is you want to see how many times the tenants pay on time and how many times they pay late and when they're paying late. And what you end up seeing is once you analyze it over at least a 12-month period, you usually find a pattern where you'll see some tenants that pay on time every single month, and those usually your tenants that you're going to have the least amount of trouble with, the least amount of problems. And then you're going to have some tenants that every single month or almost every single month they are habitually late paying the rent.
Right. So that's number 4.
Yep.
All right. So you have number 5 for us?
Let's see. Things that you want to watch out for, the top 5 things. The other thing I would recommend is that, let's see.
That's fine.
I'm sure I probably have about 10 other ones.
Good. That's good. So basically, I think if you want to learn more, there's a lot. Anthony does have webinars and even seminars. He has something coming up in Sacramento. So can you tell us about your classes that are coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be doing a one-day workshop in Sacramento. It's going to be on Saturday, September 28th. And then generally what I do is the Saturday workshop is just like an introductory class. I teach a lot of great information on terminology and the things that you need to look for when you're analyzing a deal and looking at the numbers. And then beyond that, I actually have a 4-day boot camp that I'll be coming back to Sacramento to do. That's going to be on November 11th through the 14th. And it's one of those classes, it really is a class. You're going to learn a ton of great information. I don't have, for those of your listeners that have been out to see other boot camps and other presenters, I don't have other people come in and sell you their programs. It's pretty much me for the 4 full days. And I take you through the entire 7-step process of securing your first apartment building or your second apartment building or your third apartment building. And it starts with a foundation and an introduction. And then we go on to how do you find the properties, how do you analyze them quickly, what do you need to look for when you're putting in an offer, once you get the offer accepted, how you go about doing the financing. I think I talk about 13 or 14 different ways that you can finance a property through traditional methods and non-traditional that we talked about earlier, buying them subject to, doing master lease options, things like that. The due diligence process, I spend probably 4 to 6 hours going through the due diligence process, what you need to look for, the paperwork that you need to ask for, how you need to analyze the paperwork, that kind of stuff, all the way through to what to expect at the closing table.
That's all happening November 11th to November 14th here in Sacramento, California. So you have heard it today. We spent a whole hour talking to you about investing in apartments. Anthony, it's been a pleasure. I just wish I had like 2 hours, 3 hours to talk about what you're doing and great things that you're doing and changing people's lives. But I appreciate you coming on the show today.
I appreciate being on here. Can I give out the website real quick so people know where to sign up for the class?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Okay, they can go to successclasses.com, successclasses.com. And that'll you can go to the link for workshops and boot camps, and that'll give you a whole bunch of information on those classes and the locations and all that kind of stuff.
All right. Thanks so much, Anthony. Have a great day.
Thanks, Paul. You too. Thanks for having me on.
Right. So, people, you heard it. They're investing in apartments, and I have it covered in my book. It's impossible to be poor in America. When you surround yourself with the right people, the right environment, when you bury yourself in knowledge and apply the knowledge, you will never be poor in America. And as a matter of fact, you will never be poor in any country in the world. I don't care how poor that country is. And you might be listening some places around the world right now, and you see a lot of poverty there. But you will never be poor if you listen to the show and apply some of these things that we teach you. Next week, we have a great show. We're going to have someone who's investing in hotels. Rich in 5. Just buy 5 hotels, and it might not be any of your own money, and you'll be rich. There has been Paula Joy, the author of It's Impossible to Be Poor in America. You can go to my website, just paulajoy.com, or you can basically call me anytime or email me, but go to LaJoy Solutions, befriend me on Facebook or Twitter. It's been a pleasure being with you today, and I see you next week. Until then, remember, it's impossible to be poor in America.
Thank you again for listening to Wealth Solutions for the 99%. Please join Paul LaJoy again next Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time on Voice America Business as we continue to help you build your personal wealth.
Thanks again for listening to the preceding program, brought to you on the Voice America Business Channel. For more information about our network and to check out additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericabusiness.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the preceding program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio